Good morning. At this time, if you could rise for the posting of the colors by the ROTC. Good morning. Thank you. If you can have a seat, please. Just want to go over some housekeeping and logistics for those of you interested in posing a question. During the course of today's session, you can pose a question for the panelists through index cards that will come out, and the runners will come out and give you an index card if you'd like to pose a question. Feel free to do so. The topic is Generation Mobile, the use of technology in the classroom, so please pose some wonderful, intelligent, and articulate questions. Good morning and welcome to McKinley Technology High School. For those of you that don't know, I'm David Pender and I'm the principal here. Today we join the Federal Communications Commission in bringing together students, parents, educators, and members of the business and technology community to discuss the innovation of mobile technology in the classroom. McKinley is an outstanding choice to host this prestigious event. We are the technology and STEM hub for the District of Columbia Public Schools, and our 21st century approach to teaching and learning through technology, including biotechnology, engineering and project lead the way, information technology, and media, has paved the way for our students to become the highest performing students in the United States. If our children are to compete globally in this new age of technology, then our approach to education must change and innovate to meet these new challenges. Here at McKinley, 95% of our students go off to college every year, and their increases in achievement on standardized tests over the last 4 years have been dramatic. This is not due to chance, but a focus on developing rigorous and innovative technology-rich curricula, having a school of master teachers, and our focus on aligning student learning to the demands of the global market. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we have the #1 students in the United States. Who are doing so well, they're trying to get a dress down day for Friday so desperately. And of course, a wonderful base of support from our parents and partners in the technology and business community. As we gather here today, I would like to take the opportunity to recognize a few of the important entities responsible for this tremendous event. First, I want to thank the FCC for entrusting us to host such a vital symposium with regard to educational technology and the innovations needed in education to move student achievement and to close the achievement gap once and for all. We have been fortunate enough to become connected with major industry leaders and securing partnerships as we move toward providing our students the leading STEM educational opportunities available in the United States. Our alliance with Transforming Technology and Education Compact in D.C., our partnership with the Armed Forces Communications and Electronics Association, AFCEA DC, and its member partners such as Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Google, SRI International, to name just a few, has allowed us to pursue the rigorous curriculum that permits our students to achieve at an elevated academic level in what continually becomes a more competitive global marketplace, both professionally and academically. I'd like to thank the PTSA and all of our partners for having the school ready today, as McKinley is a true beacon of the Hill that has always been in the D.C. academic community. I applaud President Obama and Chairman Genachowski for recognizing the need to address technology and STEM as a focus in educational reform. Our leaders are at the forefront of the issues that must be confronted to bring America back to the highest performing country in the world of education. It is my pleasure to welcome the FCC and Chairman Julius Genachowski to McKinley. Chairman Genachowski was nominated by President Barack Obama as Chairman of the Federal Communications Commission on March 3, 2009, and sworn into office on June 29, 2009. He has the distinguished pedigree that makes him superbly qualified to lead the FCC into the next generation of technology and what it has to offer our society. He received a JD from Harvard Law School with the distinction of Magna Cum Laude, where he was co-notes editor of the Harvard Law Review. Prior to that, he completed his studies for his BA at Columbia College, where he also graduated Magna Cum Laude. Chairman Genachowski has 2 decades of experience in public service in the private sector. Prior to his appointment, he spent more than 10 years working in the technology industry as an executive and an entrepreneur. He co-founded Launchbox Digital and Rock Creek Ventures, where he served as managing director, and he was a special advisor at General Atlantic. In these capacities, he worked to start, accelerate, and invest in early and mid-stage technology and other companies. From 1997 to 2005, he was a senior executive at IAC Interactive Corp., a Fortune 500 company, where his positions included Chief of Business Operations and General Counsel. Chairman Genachowski's public service roles have included work for previous FCC chairman in a legal capacity. He has previously served as clerk for Supreme Court Justices Souter and Brennan and at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. Chairman Genachowski also worked in Congress for Senator Charles E. Schumer of New York and on the staff of House Select Committee investigating the Iran-Contra affair. Chairman Genachowski has been active at the intersection of social responsibility and the marketplace. He was part of the founding group of New Resource Bank, which specializes in serving the needs of green entrepreneurs and sustainable businesses. And he has served on the advisory board of Environmental Entrepreneurs. He has also served as a board member of Common Sense Media, a leading nonpartisan nonprofit organization seeking to improve the media lives of children and families. We are extremely pleased that he has chosen McKinley Technology High School as the venue for this event. We firmly believe that McKinley Technology is leading the way for STEM education in the District of Columbia and soon nationally, in providing our students with the appropriate opportunities to utilize the technology and partner industry, some of whom are represented here today, that will serve their academic pursuits and provide them with the foundation to lead their peers into a new technologically savvy environment. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinguished pleasure to welcome to our school the Chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, Chairman Genachowski.
Thank you, David Pender, for that introduction. Thank you for what you have done with this great school. Thank you to all you students out there who are making his job so easy by being so good. Now, to all you students, I hope you'll be gentler with me than your football team was with the Green Wave in your last game. 42-0. And you guys are a science and tech school. What's that? Look, thank you all for coming to listen to someone from the government, from the FCC, talk a little bit, to listen to this panel, which is going to cover some really important topics. Thank you to all of you who are participating remotely. We've got folks who are participating online from as far away as Independence and Beaverton, Oregon. It's 3 hours earlier there. I think we can all do the math. It's very early. Thank you for waking up and participating in this. We appreciate it very much. Thank you to the panelists. You'll see how great they are a little bit later. To the parents and educators and experts who are going to come and make sure we have a terrific discussion on some important topics today. Let me be brief in this intro. In fact, let me start by asking a few questions of the students who are here. First, how many of you are looking forward to winter break? That's good. How many of you are looking forward to the finals you've got to take before you get to winter break? All right. All right, Principal Pender, that's for you. Now, how many of you use the internet in connection with your finals or homework or schoolwork? All right, let the record show lots of hands going up. How many of you think you'll need basic digital skills to get a good job? Everyone. And one more, how many of you know that broadband means high-speed internet? Well, that's great. You know, not that long ago, people didn't really understand what broadband was, that broadband simply means high-speed internet. It's good to see all of you have this level of knowledge because guess what? Broadband is the most transformational new technology since electricity. It's changing not only the way students do homework, not only the way people do their jobs, but virtually every aspect of our lives. The opportunities of broadband, internet, wired, and wireless are almost limitless. Just imagine. A student anywhere can have access to the best libraries, the best teachers, the best tutors in the world. In fact, you know, the last time I was here at McKinley was a number of years ago when there was something called Net Day, when I participated with a group that helped string internet wires in McKinley in the late 1990s when it was closed for repair. It's just amazing to be back here and see it now. I don't know that we were imagining then the opportunities of digital textbooks. How many of you are tired of carrying around big backpacks with 50 pounds of books in them? Right? Well, why shouldn't every kid everywhere have a digital textbook with up-to-date materials, cutting-edge interactive learning tools? Broadband enables that. Broadband can help transform healthcare for the better. Patients can have access to specialists, even if that specialist doctor is on the other side of the country. Smartphones can help people with, say, diabetes. They can track their glucose levels. They can empower, these smartphones can, real-time monitoring by their doctors, improving healthcare, lowering costs. How about energy? With broadband, the appliances in our homes will be able to talk to each other, saving energy, saving money, saving our planet. The internet enables anyone, anywhere, to dream big and bring those dreams to life. And one thing we need to do to seize the opportunities of broadband is to preserve the freedom and openness of the internet. Mark Zuckerberg was only a few years older than you when he invented Facebook in his dorm room. Sergey Brin, who went to school right up the road in Maryland, was in his early 20s when he founded Google. Neither of them had to ask permission to launch their websites, and if any of you want to follow your dreams online, you shouldn't have to either. That's why the FCC is moving to preserve the open internet. It's a vital part of what we need to do to unleash innovation and protect free speech, to foster broadband investment, and to promote a vibrant economy, creating jobs for students like you. And that's why it's essential that we move forward next week to adopt the first enforceable rules of the road to protect internet freedom, and why I'm so pleased to have broad support for the effort from across the spectrum, including the tech community, leading venture and other investors, carriers, labor and civil rights organizations. It's very important that we do this. We need to make sure also that all of our young people, no matter where they're from, have access to the internet and have the digital skills necessary to be full participants in our digital economy, in our 21st century economy. We need to drive broadband adoption and access everywhere, high-speed access with everyone connected so that we can compete in the 21st century, drive innovation and investment. And for our country to be competitive in the new world, we're looking to schools like this one, like McKinley Tech, to equip students with more than just basic skills. We need to lead the world in what people call, what you all know as the STEM subjects: science, technology, engineering, math. President Obama has made this a priority. This school is doing so much toward that goal. All right, now I have another question for you. Since I've started speaking, how many of you have checked your phones for texts or emails? Now, come on. All right. How many of you were tempted to check your phone? All right. Here's the thing. As with every revolutionary new technology, broadband internet brings not only massive opportunities, but some concerns. One study found that the average teenager consumes 11 hours of media content a day on multiple screens. Another found that teenagers text so often it comes to a text every 14 minutes. We all understand, quote, the lure of distraction, in the words of a compelling recent New York Times article that described the challenges of new technologies. And we also know how some texts or online messages can be hurtful. This all can have real consequences. Consequences for schoolwork, consequences for friendships and relationships, consequences for careers, and consequences that literally can be life or death. 80% of fatal teen car accidents are caused by distracted driving. That's a tragedy we have to tackle. I have a simple message for you. Don't text and drive. I've got 3 kids. My oldest, the little ones are 4 and 6. The oldest one is 19. He's a driver. I want him to have access to the internet for 1,000 reasons. I want him to have a mobile phone with him wherever he is, right? If he gets into an accident, if he has some trouble, I want him to be able to call me, to call 911. I want all the benefits of that. They can change the world for the better for my kids. But I don't want them texting and driving. These are just some of the issues that the panelists will discuss in a few minutes. I'm just so glad that we're holding this forum today, so glad that we're doing it here at McKinley. I'm here today to learn from students, parents, educators, and experts on what we can do to seize the opportunities of wired and wireless broadband while avoiding the pitfalls. It's not about government regulation. It's about responsibility. It's about information and education. It's about empowerment. Empowering students, empowering parents with resources and tools to navigate the digital age. And it's about providing a boost to innovators, to business innovators and social innovators, developing new products and tools that can help parents and students with the challenges of having limits, and also with identifying the good stuff that's out there, the quality digital content that can help make a positive difference for students and families. So now, to kick off today's discussion, we're very lucky to have a special guest. She's right here in this computer. You can't see her, but you will in a minute. She is Emmy Award-winning actress Jane Lynch. You all know her from the hit show Glee. And that's just, yeah, give it up for Glee. Glee is just one of the many TV shows and films that Jane Lynch has made special. My own favorite is a film from a few years ago called Best in Show. I'm so pleased that Jane Lynch is here, and I am pleased to report to all of you that just today, the Golden Globes nominated Jane Lynch for a big award. So Jane's been focused on these issues, and before we bring her up live, let me ask that we play a PSA, a public service announcement, that Jane helped put together.
Hi, I'm Jane Lynch. Today I'm a model citizen, but I used to be a model jerk. Mobile bullying, text rage, you name it, I typed it up and hit send. Eventually my bad habits caught up with me. Luckily, the good folks at LG put me through their text rehab program, and now I'm fulfilling my community service by showing other parents how to guide their kids through the pitfalls of mobile phone misuse. I'm Jane Lynch, and I'm here to teach text ed. Question 15. TD, TM means A, turn dad toward mom. B, talk dirty to me. Eyes on your own papers, guys. C, too dumb to mumble. And pencils down. How do you think you all did? Yeah? Well, all the answers were B.
What?
Really?
What?
Oh, come on, people. If you want to stay all up in your kids' stuff, you're going to have to learn these abbreviations. Your kids are saving precious minutes every day speaking in a language that would baffle the KGB.
Yeah, but how do we break the code? How?
Don't you worry. There's an easy tool to decipher any text acronym, which is in your packets on the top of page 4.
LGDetexter.com.
That's right. The LG Detector will help you figure them out. But the best way to commit them to memory is get into the game yourself. Text with your kids. Believe me, they'll dig it. Hey, Eyeshadow, since you've been so helpful, why don't you read the next little bit?
Well, thank you. 83% of teens say that they prefer getting a text message from a parent rather than a phone call.
Well, sure, that makes sense, doesn't it? With a text, you're not dropping a brick in on whatever they're doing. You're just giving them a little tap on the shoulder. That's what texting is for. So open up that digital dialogue and start speaking their language.
Hey, Jane Lynch, I bet you can't guess what this means.
I like your hair today, too, Kurt.
Wow. She's amazing.
And now, for your homework assignment. Today's homework is a fun one. Go to the link below and try to stump the LG Detector. I'll bet you a bag of kittens you can't. Kittens not included. Face the facts, send the message. LG Text Ed. Life's good and class is dismissed.
So as you can see, Jane Lynch brings her wonderful trademark humor to the issue of responsible mobile usage through her involvement in the LG Text Ed program. In her role as a member of the LG Text Ed Council, Jane is tackling issues like sexting and texting while driving and mobile bullying, all of which we'll be talking about today. Now, while the video is great, the real thing is even better, and I'm now delighted to welcome via Skype, award-winning actress and recovering text offender, the great Jane Lynch. Jane, we can...
Hi. Good morning, Chairman Genachowski. It's good to see you, and good morning, McKinley Tech. How is everybody doing today?
Hey, everyone can hear you. We're so glad you've participated. I know it's early in LA. We appreciate you rolling out of bed. You look great for having just rolled out of bed.
Thank you.
So we're here today to talk about the opportunities and challenges around technology with parents and students and experts. We just saw the video that you did with LG TextEd. Pretty entertaining, but with serious business at the heart of it, right?
That's true. When the folks at LG asked me to be a part of the TextEd Advisory Council, I thought it would be a great way to help parents and teens learn more about how we can all be more responsible when it comes to mobile technology. Now, the videos are funny, I hope, and we have been able to laugh a little. But at the end of the day, this is a very important issue, and I'm glad to see the FCC and everyone there so dedicated to having this conversation about mobile technology, good and the bad behaviors. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but teens on average send a text every 14 minutes. Now, that's more than 20,000 texts in the U.S. every second. In fact, I'll bet someone in the audience is texting right now. Is that true? I'm sure it is. To all the texters, I'm sending a text right now. To all the texters in the audience, and you know who you are, listen closely, because today, I bet you're going to learn something. And parents out there, don't think you're getting off easy. Now, we know from our research that half of you are guilty of texting and driving. That's right, parents. They're on to you. So we have to make sure that you're doing everything you can to model good behavior.
Well, Jane, I couldn't agree more. We can all benefit from a little thinking and sharing about how technology, particularly mobile technology, is changing our lives every day. How did you decide to get involved in this, get involved with LG TextEd?
Well, as a new parent, I inherited a 9-year-old daughter in a marriage. These issues are personally very important to me. Being a parent is scary enough, and when you throw technology into the mix, definitely some help. So when the opportunity came up to join LG TextEd Advisory Council and be part of sharing a little knowledge with parents and teens about this new world of mobile technology, while getting to laugh and hopefully entertain people, it seems like a project that I can pass up. Now, we hope that the videos are funny. They might have situation. But issues like mobile bullying and texting, sexting, everything that we consider mobile misuse, well, they're not going away anytime soon. And it's about time that we all learn to acknowledge that they're out there and figure out some solutions for stopping it before more people get hurt.
Well, absolutely. Could not agree more.
Great. So before I go, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for you, and I think maybe we should take a little vote with the audience. I hear you've played basketball with the president. I also hear you didn't rip his mouth open like the other guy. So who's better, audience? Who do you think? Can I hear a round of applause if you think Genachowski here can outdunk Obama? Very good. Now, how many of you think that Obama schooled Genachowski on the basketball? That's what I thought, too. Well, I guess that settled us. Hey, you know, if the FCC gig doesn't work out for you, you can come out to L.A. and see if the Lakers need a point guard.
Yeah, you bet. Well, Jay, thank you for the vote of confidence. I voted on the right side of that question. And thanks again for joining us today. It's been great talking to you. We admire your work as an actress, and we admire your work in helping bring these issues to the attention of students and parents all over the country. Congratulations on your nomination today. Good luck with Glee. We're all huge fans, and we appreciate you participating.
You bet.
Everyone, give it up for Jane Lynch.
Have fun, everybody. Use your phones responsibly.
Thank you.
Your phones.
Well, that was great. And now let me introduce a leading expert on Generation Mobile. Amanda Lenhart is a senior researcher at the Pew Internet and American Life Project. She's here to present her findings on teens and mobile phones. Amanda, thank you for coming. And everyone, please welcome Amanda.
Hi. So I can't really think of anything harder than trying to follow Jane Lynch, not to mention with a whole slide deck of slides about data. So in order to try to make this a little bit more interesting, what I thought I'd do was have my talk today be a little bit more of a conversation. And so, again, I'm sort of stealing a page from Chairman Genachowski's book. So I'm going to pose a bunch of questions to you and ask you about some of your cell phone use and some of your mobile phone use. And then we're going to see how the McKinley Tech folks match up with the rest of the United States and teenagers here in the U.S. So first slide, please. So how many of you actually have a cell phone? I would be shocked if any of you did not raise your hand. In the United States, next slide, please. In the U.S., 75% of American teens have a phone. Which seems kind of low, but you have to remember that we survey kids from 12 to 17, and so some of the 12-year-olds, some of the 13-year-olds don't yet have a phone. But as you can see from the slide that was back there, parents are actually a little bit more likely to have phones than teens are. Next slide, please. But you can see, actually, there aren't actually a lot of differences in who has a phone. The only differences that are actually operative are age. So again, younger teens, middle schoolers. Are there any middle schoolers here? Oh, they're up in the, all right, the middle schoolers up in the, up top. So middle schoolers are less likely to have phones than high schoolers. Also, kids who come from lower income backgrounds are a little bit less likely to have phones than kids who come from wealthier households. But overall, race and ethnicity and gender don't make any difference in whether or not you're likely to have a phone. Next slide, please. So what are people doing with phones? Well, not surprisingly, they're text messaging. And they're text messaging, as you all know, a lot more than they're doing pretty much anything else. More than they're talking on the phone, talking on a landline, more than they're even instant messaging, emailing, and all of these other ways of communicating have really remained flat over the past couple of years, while text messaging, as you can see in that upper left corner, is just skyrocketing up. Next slide, please. So, I'm going to throw out some numbers for potential numbers of text messages you might send in a day. How many of you send less than 50 texts a day? Raise your hands. That's about what I thought. How many of you send less than 100 texts a day? How many of you send around 200 texts a day? Okay, how many of you send more than 200 texts a day? Next slide, please. So, as you can see, you all very much exceed the average American. So the median number, for those of you who have had a little stats, is 50 texts a day, and that's from 12 to 17. But as you can see, here we represent both the mean and the median. And what this tells us is that there's a bunch of people, most likely many of the people in this room, who are actually outliers, who are sending way more text messages a day. The average teen sends about 3,300 texts a month. And so you guys are, I'm sure, there, and in fact, it sounds like exceeding that. So next slide, please. So now we've got to go to the other side. How many of you don't make a single voice call on a typical day? How many of you make about 2 or 3 voice calls on a typical day? How many of you make 5 voice calls on a typical day? 10. So next slide, please. So as you can see, actually with voice calling is remarkably standard across age groups, across genders. Pretty much the average for most people is making and receiving about 5 calls a day. So this includes somebody calling you and you calling someone else. As you can see, there's another folks who sort of pull the numbers up as the mean, who send about 10 or 11 a day, who make about 10 or 11 calls a day. But there's a remarkable consistency around using voice calling. And actually, adults actually send the same number of make and receive the same number of voice calls as adolescents do. Interestingly, with text messaging, we've got that 50 average or median for teens, and for adults it's 10. So if you ever wondered why your parents and other adults around you can have absolutely no idea and cannot conceive of you sending as many text messages as you do, it's because they don't get anywhere close to it in their own daily lives. Next slide, please. So there's a bunch of other things you can do with your phone. How many of you listen to music on your phone? How many of you record videos with your phone? How many of you surf the internet from your phone? How many of you send instant messages from your phone? How many of you check a social networking site from your phone? Next slide, please. So as you can see, it's not just text messaging. It's not just voice calling. Your phone, as you know, is a computer in your pocket. It can serve as a communicative and informational hub. It allows you to record the experiences of your daily life and then instantly share it out with other people. You guys certainly exceed the statistical norm. About a quarter of teens say they send and receive email and surf the web on their phone. Next slide, please. For some kids, however, this is actually much more important. So for low-income kids who live in households where the families earn less than $30,000 a year, going online with your cell phone is actually the primary way you're going online. It's an increasingly important way of going online because, as you can see, many of these kids don't have a computer in the home, or if they do, it's not connected to the internet. So the cell phone actually, for many, serves as a leapfrog. So instead of having to compete for access at a library, instead of having to share access with your siblings, many teens in these populations are able to get online themselves from their own personal device much more easily. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to survey you on this one because this is some of the negative things that happen to people with cell phones. Certainly we see that about half of teens say they've gotten a spam text or an unwanted text message. Certainly about half of driving age, so these numbers are for driving age teens, say they've talked on the phone while driving, or they've texted. A third have texted while driving. About a quarter say they've been bullied or harassed via their phone. That could be via text messaging or by calling. And then everybody's favorite, sexting, sending nude or nearly nude suggestive images to somebody else. I'm not going to ask you how many of you have done that. About 15% say they've received them, and about 4% of teens say they've sent them. Next slide, please. So how many of you would say that your parents keep an eye on your phone use? Raise your hand. Very few, very few. All right, next slide, please. So what this slide basically tells us is that parents are, in theory, paying attention to what their kids do online. The overarching message here is that if you're female and if you're 12 or 13 years old, your parents are a lot more likely to be monitoring your phone use than if you're male or if you're in high school. So you can take that up with your parents when you get home if you have anything to say about that, but that's the overall message here. And it's also to say that parents have a lot of tools in their arsenal with which to monitor your phone use. Some can set time limits about how long you can use the phone or on what time of day, sometimes about places where you can use it. Some of them can limit the number of text messages you send. How many of you have ever had your parents take your phone away as a punishment? Yeah, it's a good one. Parents are doing that a lot. So next slide, please. So this is another question. I don't actually know about the cell phone rules here at McKinley. But what I can tell you, next slide, please, is that most schools allow kids to have cell phones at school, but you can't have them in class. Is that what it is here? Yeah. So there's another set of schools that are really much more permissive than McKinley that allow you to have a cell phone pretty much any time you want at any time of day. That's about 12%. And then there's another quarter of schools that are much, much more locked down than McKinley is, where you're actually not allowed to have a phone on campus at all. And if you're caught with it, it's confiscated immediately. Next slide, please. So then there's a bunch of things that teens can do with phones in schools. As you can see, about 75% or so of teens say they have their phone turned on at school. So the darkest bars on the right are the people who have never done this. As you can see, about 63% of teens say they've sent a text message during class. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. And a very bold 1/4 of teens say they have made a cell phone call while in class. Next slide, please. So then we decided to look and see whether it mattered what kind of school you went to. Does it matter if your school is really permissive or if your school is really locking you down. And the truth of it is, unfortunately, that it really doesn't matter all that much. Since 58% of teens who aren't supposed to have a cell phone at school at all have sent a text message from class. So certainly, I think this slide tells us that we have more work to do when, particularly if you're a school administrator, when it comes to regulating the phone in schools. And also, I think, suggests really how important the phone has become. I know that in my experience, I left my smartphone at home this morning, and when I discovered it, I went back and I got it, because I couldn't imagine having to go through the day without it, and I suspect that many of you feel the same way. So I'm going to stop there. Next slide, please. And then I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Rosalind Wiseman is going to co-moderate the next panel, which is on called Generation Mobile Speaks. Rosalind is an internationally recognized expert on children, teens, parenting, bullying, and leadership. And she's best known as the author of Queen Bees and Wannabes, which is the book that is the basis for the comedy movie Mean Girls. Rosalind?
I guess they do like that. Yeah.
That's smart. No one. Do I get to go first? Did you get to go first? I get to go first? All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Rosalind Wiseman, and I'm going to be co-facilitating this panel. And the panel, what I want to do with this panel, I don't know about you, but what I want to do with the panel is I want to hear from young people about how to actually talk about these issues of technology in ways that make sense, that we don't waste anybody's time. Because I think lots of times when we do this work, that when we talk about it, it's just general. And so we're going to really try and get to people's specifics, and with young people specifics in our panel, about what we can do and advice and what your experience is. So you all know Chairman Julius Genachowski. He gave us our intro. And we're going to be moderating the first panel, Generation Mobile Speaks. Before we begin, I would like to introduce our panelists, the people right here. And as well, I'm currently a member of the LG Text Ed Advisory Council, as is Jane Lynch, which is a program designed to help educate parents about tweens and teens' mobile use. And recently, LG conducted a survey of teens that you heard Jane talk about, where teens are, what their survey is reporting is that kids are using it and texting about once every 14 minutes. So to introduce our panel, we have Tori Duggar, who is a 17-year-old attending some school, maybe McKinley. Jonathan Harris, who's a senior at Dr. Henry A. Wise High School, who has maintained a 4-plus GPA while taking honors and AP courses. That's incredible. And is a member of the PG County Board of Education. Why don't we hold your applause, even though everybody's fabulous, until we're at the very end. Erin Maines, who's a sophomore at Falls Church High School, and she's an honor student and she does tremendous amounts of things in and out of the classroom. Frank Preston, who is a high school student at Howard High School in Howard County, and is pursuing a career in medicine with an interest in technology. Lanita Preston, who is a local young adult science fiction author, engineer, and professor. She's the mother of 4 children from 7 to 16 years of age. Stacy Kopitsky, I didn't do it right, I'm sorry, and we talked about this earlier, has been in the field of public education for 22 years. Her experiences range from a classroom as a gifted resource teacher, elementary and middle school administrator, and a mother of teenage sons. Perry Aftab, who is a privacy and security lawyer advising industry leaders on safety in internet and wireless risk management issues. She is best known as the Kids Internet Lawyer for her devotion to family and children online. Mr. Don Gordon, principal, there you are, of John Philip Sousa Middle School in Washington, D.C., is a lifelong educator, continuous learner, and instructional leader. In 2008, Mr. Jordan became a principal at Sousa in Washington, D.C., and is credited with reversing school culture and boosting academic achievement. So these are our panelists, and we really hope that this is going to be, and I know that this is going to be a good one where we have an amazing exchange of ideas. And remember, as Chairman Genachowski said, if you have questions and comments, you can Twitter them and we can engage them as part of the process. All right, are we ready? All right, let's start. So Stacy, we're going to talk to you to start off as, an overall, to give us a picture. So do students texting affect school? And if you can give us some concrete examples, like, a few concrete examples of how you think texting affects the school environment.
Okay, well, at Cabin John Middle School, which is a middle school in Montgomery County Public Schools in Maryland, we do have a policy, just to give you some background feedback, on the county's policy, which is similar to what was shared in the data. Middle school and high school students are permitted to have their cell phones on the bus and in the school until the first school bell rings. Then they are supposed to be off and stowed or out of sight. Out of sight does not necessarily mean it has to be off their personal body. We encourage lockers, but sometimes they choose to have it more safely kept on their personal self. With that being said, I think the chairman has also gone over the laws and regulations about texting and driving and the laws that are in place. I think the best thing for the schools to say is we do have policies, but does that stop 100% of the use? No. As schools, and as our school in particular, we give out constant reminders and constant feedback to parents and students about the expectations, but we're still putting out fires. So as we put out fires, it's a daily reminder to students and looking at what are the expectations and what happens whenever we have these cell phones pop up in class and interrupt the instructional day. So as a good educator, I'll start with the positive. I do think that not during the instructional day, but part of the instructional day is kids do give me feedback on how important cell phones are to text their friends, their peers about homework assignments, information they might have missed if they're absent. They look at opportunities to network and connect in a social aspect, so that's the positive. Two examples I'd share. One that happened at my school recently was with the wild forwarding of text messages about hitting each other. It's hard to get a handle on where to find the start of a wild forwarding text, especially in a middle school environment where it's not always a positive environment for positive choices for kids. So that's one other example.
Okay, thank you. And so I think what we'd like to do is ask the young people, we live with technology, as Chairman Genachowski said, this is a positive, huge privilege to be able to, and it's going to come into the schools. So one of the questions I really want to direct to the audience and to the teens up here is, what are we saying as adults that are effective and ineffective to you about these issues, about using technology? When you have a principal, what are principals saying, for example, not to put you on the spot, that are ineffective and effective about how we talk to you about using technology and mobile phones in the schools, when some, as we said, we heard from Pew, some have very stringent rules, some don't, but we know that you all have more control of yourselves than we do, right? So how do we do this? How do we make this effective? So I'd like to turn it over to young people and say, like, very specifically, what are things that adults have said to you that are effective about managing mobile use? And what are the things that adults have said to you that have been ineffective? And then what advice do you have so that we can be more effective for you? Frank.
Well, I know for a fact that when a person comes up to me when I'm using my phone and comes in a really negative manner and just takes the phone from you, that kind of thing, that is really upsetting. And to have somebody to take your to do something like that, you feel like your privacy is being violated. I had gotten my phone taken away before, and the immediate reaction is turn off my phone, take out my battery, because usually when people come up to you and with a very violent way of taking your phone, you feel like your privacy is being violated, and that you have to take measures to keep them out of your.
Sure. Tori, can you give us an example? Give us, your comments, and also maybe an example if you're thinking of what Frank's saying. Like, what's a way that somebody takes your phone that feels disrespectful or a violation of your privacy?
I'd say that when the teachers make assumptions, like they assume if you're in your bag that you're using your phone. And so they ask for your phone. And of course, most of us have phones. And so they come to our bag, they take the phone. And like Frank said, we get upset, and that makes kids want to find more ingenuitive ways of using their phones without getting caught. So what they're doing is making the kids think more of ways to hide it, and it's making the situation worse rather than better. Like, I've had teachers who have the warning policy, where if they see it once, they'll say, put it away. And I find that a lot more effective than taking it outright, because when they give us our phone back, now we know we can't do it that way. We have to use our phone a different way to not get caught. And it's not doing anything but making it increase the amount of text messages or phone usage in class, because now kids are saying, oh, I can't use my phone that way, but I can use it this way and won't get caught.
Gotcha. And so, Aaron, Jonathan, anything to add?
I have some teachers that pretty much say, like, I know what it looks like when kids are texting. So, like, if you're looking down or you're in your bag or something like that, then they're going to ask you to take your phone away. But normally, like, the administrators at my school they don't really put it into effect as much. So they say that we're not supposed to have our phones in school, but many of the teachers are really lenient, and they allow us to use phones in class.
So let's be concrete and give adults some advice. What are effective ways to reach out to you? What are effective ways?
Basically, don't come in an aggressive way. Just ask politely. Be like, hey, so and so, can you please stop using your phone? We're trying to get through the lesson. And most of the time, that works. Like, I've been caught, and teachers said that to me. I'll put my phone away. I usually don't take it out the whole day.
And what happens if the kid tries to hide the phone or dumps it and says, I'm not doing it?
Then usually the teacher will take it away.
This is a great discussion. Let me ask you all something. It's a two-part question. But the first is, what do you really think about this issue of frequency of texting or multitasking, right? You hear some of the adults here talk about text every 14 minutes and kids multitasking and all the rest, and that's a problem. What do you think? Do you think that, when you think about getting the balance right between your schoolwork, in-school homework, and the different lures of the devices, do you think that there is a challenge here? Is there something that you worry about? Go ahead.
I'm a firm believer in the classroom. We really shouldn't have our cell phones because it's time to learn about instruction. But any other time during the day, if we're at lunch, if we're on the bus, if we're walking in the hallways, as long as we're following the rules, doing what we're told, there's no reason why we shouldn't have our cell phones. I just think that it's an issue where the adults say, oh, well, it's a cell phone, and we believe that you shouldn't have a cell phone, so put it away, when they really cannot give us any concrete reason why you couldn't have the cell phone it's outside the classroom. And I think some effective ways, one of the effective ways that helped me, and I know we're getting outside the classroom, one of the effective ways that helped me not text and drive was when somebody sat down and showed me the statistics about, okay, this is how this is your chance of get in an accident while texting, and this is your chance of getting an accident when you're not texting. So showing me the information, putting it in front of my face, saying, here are the statistics. Here are some students that, broke a leg, get in an accident because they were texting. Really is effective.
So you're saying the facts matter, that you don't want to just be told do this, not do that, but if you see facts that show texting and driving really can lead to getting hurt, that's persuasive. Go ahead, Tori.
I agree with Frank, and I also say that that's true, what you just stated, because just telling a kid don't do it because you shouldn't do it, we're not going to listen. Point blank, okay, yeah, you said don't do it. Anyway, back to my text message. But if you actually give us a reasoning behind it, I'd say about 80 to 90% of teens will listen if there's a reason behind it. Because most kids say, my parent told me to do it, but they didn't give me a reason, so I'm not going to do it. But if we have an actual concrete, like Frank said, concrete evidence over why we shouldn't do it, we're more inclined to listen to it. Because at the age we are now, we can understand the facts.
Let me ask one more question.
Yeah, sure. And then I'd like Perry to chat about the texting and the driving.
Okay, well, good. I want to put you all in the shoes of being the big brother or the big sister, and you're home, and you have a little brother or a little sister, and they're doing homework, and you see that they're using a computer to do homework, and you see that they're doing some research on a site, and they're learning skills. You think, all right, well that's good. I'm just going to assume you think that's a good thing. And then suppose you come back and you see that. They're not doing their homework anymore. They've gone on to, some site to look at videos, or they're doing their homework and they got their phone out and they're IMing at the same time and they're doing all this stuff, and you're a little worried that they're not actually concentrating on their homework. So it's your little brother, your little sister. What do you say to them?
Stop. I think it's a maturity level thing. At my age, I know when being on the computer, texting is going to get in the way of learning or getting a task done. For a young person, my little brother who could be 5 or 6, they don't really know, and their mind automatically thinks about play, fun. So just telling them to stop and saying, hey, you can still, text as long as you get the work done in a timely manner, or you can still text as long as you, wash the dishes in a timely manner. So I think it's more maturity level. As you get older, you know what's right and what's wrong. You know how to meet deadlines. You know how to do certain things. So as you get older, it just becomes a maturity thing. If you know that you can't multitask, then you know not to multitask. Do one thing at a time.
All right. So I'm sorry, Frank. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I actually do have a sister that does that. As soon as she gets home, she's right on the computer, Facebook and stuff. She doesn't even do her homework until later on in the day. So, basically, as long as you get it done, it's fine.
We're going to go back. We'll go back to this. One of the things, though, I want to ask you all just to think about is how often when you go onto these sites or when you're playing a video game, that time passes so fast and you wake up and it's 2 hours later, right? You realize. So it's hard to do time management when they're so good at sucking you in, and so that you lose track of time. So it's hard to manage your time and multitask that way. I want to just think about that. But Perry Aftab has done, what I'd like to do is turn it a little bit to Perry about the driving, and then I would like for Principal Jordan, to be able to talk about, flip back a little bit to what we were talking about. How do you manage this in a concrete, common sense way with the comments that the students made? So, Perry.
Okay, I work with students a lot, giving you the tools you need to change the world. And one of my teen angels, Teen Internet Safety Volunteers, created Curb Distracted Driving and held his own event on texting and driving and all aspects of distracted driving. One of the things that he recognized was how often adults, parents, older brothers and sisters that you have, are texting while they are driving you, or your younger brothers and sisters, or people you care about. And that was a real issue. A separate issue, I'm going to want you to answer this. Second issue was when we asked young people if they texted while driving, they answered one way. And when we asked them if they read a text while driving, they answered it in another way. So the kids who say they're texting, that means you're moving your thumbs while you're communicating with somebody else as opposed to reading what they're sending to you. So what role do you think teens can play in stopping the parents from texting and driving or driving distracted?
Well, actually, like, on the way here, I think I saw at least 5 drivers texting while driving. But sometimes I'm in the car with a family member, and he has a droid, so you can talk into it, and it turns your words into text message. And I think he thinks that's, like, a good alternative to texting.
Do you?
I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Frank?
I've actually I've been in the car with somebody that's driving and texting before, and I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty scary. Like, I feel like they're not paying attention to the road. The one time they actually veered over to the little speed bumps on the side. I was like, oh. At that point, you gotta just come up and you gotta be like, hey, stop. Can you focus on the road for a little bit? I'm trying to get to where I gotta get to, you know. And usually that works. You just got to be upfront with the person that's driving and tell them that you're not comfortable with being in the car when they're texting. Or you just take the phone and I'll text for you, that kind of thing.
That's the answer.
Well, and I think one of the things that I would ask the students here, for all of the students here, is that we know, I think in general, that texting and driving is dangerous. Everyone's going to say that when we're sitting in this room. Yet I'm really challenged not to do it when I'm in the car. I pick up my phone and then I have to put it away, right? Because it's I get so tempted. So I think actually one of the things that I would charge the young people here about is to come up with ways, specific concrete things that you can say to parents about reminding us in some ways to be good role models for you. And also for you all to hold yourselves accountable in the same way that you want the adults to, is that we can talk about it in this room about it being dangerous, we shouldn't do it, but it's another thing when we're not only driving, but when we're crossing the street. Right? I mean, how dangerous is that when you're seeing somebody texting and they're crossing the street? So I want you to think about that in terms of leaving this kind of a panel of what is it concretely that we can do to address this issue in more positive and constructive ways. So would you please, as the person who's in the schools every day, day in and out, give us some of your wisdom?
Yes, and I'm also speaking from the perspective of a parent. I have a 7th grade student, so I realized lately in parents, I think we have to realize that we're not as cool as we think we are. My daughter, she teaches me that every day. What we do at the school level, I think, is very important from the beginning of the school year. We have to set clear guidelines, and we have to have a technology policy that students are involved in developing. Most schools have parent handbooks, but if you look at the parent handbooks, it might be a very small section on technology. So we have to do a lot to make sure that our technology policies are real, that they're thorough, and that they're serious. But again, the student input part is very important. Also, we cannot frown on student use of technology because it's here. One stat that I've been reading a lot about is students find somehow, some way to fit in 10 hours of technology usage daily. We can't fight it. We have to figure out how we can utilize that. At Susan and all educators, I'm sure your goal is student achievement and development of character. We have to figure out how we can use what students are doing to achieve those goals. What I do know is there's 3 reasons students use technology. One is hanging out. They call it hanging out when you socialize with your friends and things like that. The second piece would be messing around. They call it messing around, where you might go to the internet, you might search, do some Google type things, read newspapers and magazines. And the third, and I was sharing this with my students on the way over, the third portion is called geeking out. Right. And with geeking out, it's actually a positive. This is where students can use technology to build networks with people. I talked to one kid coming up, she wants to be a lawyer. students can use technology to form those networks, get information on things that they plan on doing in the future, and use technology to benefit, their goals. So at Susan, what we're doing, we're trying to make sure that we tell kids that it's a time for hanging out, messing around, but we expect you to spend this much time on geeking out or, focusing on your education. When kids have that buy-in and they understand that you actually care about their development, they will respect those rules.
I'd like to bring in another parent, so if you could, please.
I'm sitting over here biting at the bit because as a young adult science fiction writer, I have to put myself in a kid's place lots of times, and I think we parents forget what it was like to be a kid. One of the things that we did not talk about that texting and Facebook and all these wonderful things give us is it gives kids a venue to be popular. If you are a quiet person at school and you kind of really don't talk well face to face, being on the internet, being on Facebook, being on Twitter allows you a forum to really create who you want to be. And it's very addictive to kids. It's very addictive to adults. And I also think that we need to educate our kids and give them empowerment, because one of the things that I talk to my kids about is the fact that everything you text, everything you tweet about, everything you put on Facebook doesn't go away just because you delete it or you don't see it on the screen. It stays there forever. That means that what you tweet about and what you put on Facebook get cached. When you Google somebody that has a Facebook account and they've closed that account and yet their name still shows up as they're in Facebook, where do you think that data is being held? So that's one thing about, I think when we talk about young people, that we have to give them a little more credit. And we have to educate them, because a lot of adults don't even realize that either. What you put on the internet, what you text, what you put on Facebook, even though you think it's deleted, doesn't necessarily mean it's deleted.
Let me ask a question. We're going to have to end a few minutes earlier than we previously planned, and I think this is a good segue into a couple of things. One is, and this is to the students, is that, and I would ask this to you all too in the audience, that when you know that, just like when we say driving and texting is bad, you shouldn't do it, it's dangerous. Similarly, I'm asking you about if you know that things on Facebook are going to be cached forever, does it stop the person from posting the whatever it is? And now let's go more specific into whatever it is. So besides geeking out, hanging out, and messing around, one of the things I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of what the technology is used for is creating and maintaining a lot of drama, right? A lot of you stole my boyfriend, so now you are this, you stole this, da-da-da-da-da, I can't believe you think you're like this, I'm going to put you, all this just, people decide that they're not going to talk to you, you're trying to figure out why, and then you figure out this person's really mad at you, but then you think they're wrong, so then you start all this drama. Okay. So if you're in the moment and you feel like somebody is doing something wrong, right, something wrong to you, and you're sitting there with the phone, then the question is, this is a two-part question, the question is what stops you, or can anything stop you when you think somebody has done something wrong to you, spreading malicious information, sending a picture that you did not give consent to, that is totally embarrassing. What stops you from contributing to the drama? Because you think in your mind you're just trying to get back at the person, or you're just trying to even out the playing field. So I'll hold the second question for the students for a few minutes, but just think about that for the audience as well. It's is anything going to stop you from contributing to the drama? Tori.
I think really it's only your conscience that can stop you, because what will stop you from saying it in their face? What you say to someone stays with the person just as much as what you put on Facebook or sending a text message stays with the person. So really the only thing that can stop you is you. it depends on the type of person, their maturity, and their personality. Because I know personally, I've put some stuff that I really shouldn't have put before.
I was just going to ask you.
I put some stuff on Twitter or Facebook that I really shouldn't have put. And just as if I would have said it to their face, I had to go back and think about it, and in some cases, apologize, just as I would if I said it to the person. Because things you put on Facebook or Twitter, they can be read two different ways. They can be read the way you say it, or they can be read the way the person.
And right. And let me just let me ask one more question that we can just sort of go through, and this will be like our last sort of question as we go through. Excuse me. So let's talk for a little bit about the pictures and about people sending pictures. And adults are really focused on sexting, right? As like this is this thing that's happening and people are freaked out about it. So first of all, I'd like to ask Principal Jordan, have you dealt with it this year? It is December. Have you dealt with it this year?
Well, no, I haven't. Not at all. I think a lot goes back to, again, character development. And the young lady, Tori, just spoke about that. Even though the media use and the technology is a major issue, it goes back to what type of person the kid is. So in school, my goal is to try to make sure we are developing students with character. And most of the time, kids would do the right thing if you, just like Jonathan said, explain it to them, the positives and the negatives and why you shouldn't and why you should do certain things. So we haven't.
So here's my thought. Here's my questions for the kids, and then I'd like the adults to contribute. So if a picture does goes around, do you think the fact that there is an embarrassing or sexually provocative picture of a fellow student impacts the school environment? Do you think, for example, like how do other students interact with the person who received the picture, to the person who forwarded the picture, to the person who sent it? So how does it impact the overall school? So Jonathan.
To answer the question, does it impact the school environment? Yes. But it does it in a positive and a negative way. So the people who, if a picture of a girl or a guy was sent and it made its way on Facebook, there are two types of people. There are the people that's going to say, hey, go on Facebook, go to the Wise Hose page and see her half naked. And then right under the, and then right there, and I know probably McKinley Tech probably has one of those pages, but then right under it, it's a lot of students that's going to say, you know what, I know this girl or this guy personally. She's never done that. She's not that type of person. Why are you trying to embarrass somebody? Why are you trying to hide behind Facebook and its technology? So it's really, yes, it does affect the school environment, but then I think it just goes back to that maturity level. Mature people are not going to try to embarrass somebody like that on Facebook. They're not going to try to send those pictures. They're not even going to ask for the pictures. And then I think it also goes to self-esteem and self-confidence. Why are you even taking pictures of yourself to put out there like that? So I think it's many factors that go into it. Yes, it does affect the school environment, but I think actually students do a great job, and we do a great job of supporting each other when it does happen, when somebody does make that mistake. A lot of students get behind and say, you know what, she was going through something, she made a mistake, he made a mistake, she's not really that person, and you shouldn't, look down upon her like that. You should be trying to uplift her or uplift him.
Aaron, and then we'll move over here.
I haven't really observed that much of a problem in my school. From what I've seen, kids are pretty good about keeping it to themselves. So, they like, even if they do send things to each other, it doesn't really spread around.
Okay. So adults, what would you like to say, Stacey? Go ahead. Wait, and then Perry.
I would just like to say from the middle school environment again, this middle school that I work at currently, I've been there for 5 years, and we've had one case. And it was one case of a young lady who sent pictures and videos that got forwarded to 3 other sister middle schools and 2 feeder high schools. And it was devastating. And I think that the kids have definitely nailed it. It is the maturity. You're talking about 11 and 12-year-olds versus high school students that maybe know better and don't have that sense of urgency to send those types of things for attention. And so I think to put it into perspective, and we probably have about a 90% cell phone use at our school, that it is a concern. It is a parent concern nationally, but we've had one case in 5 years.
Perry. Well, Amanda's research and ours show that, and according to what kids are telling us, equal numbers of boys and girls are taking these pictures and sharing them. However, you've got sexed bullying. So when the image gets out, generally, if it's of a girl, other girls will forward it, not because it's a naked body, but to destroy her reputation. Boys will forward it because it's a picture of a naked girl. Schools now don't know what to do with the fact that they have these images that may qualify as child pornography. Very serious people go to jail for moving those around. Kids are now afraid when they get them that they may be charged with possession of child pornography. And we've had many cases around the country where even if you take a picture of yourself, if you're underage, you can be charged with creating child pornography. And if you move it from someone to someone else, it's distribution. So now once you get police involved, it creates and wreaks havoc everywhere. So we're seeing a lot of problems when it hits, and it hits a lot more often than what I'm hearing here from any of the schools that we're dealing with around the country.
Chairman, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to make as we wrap?
I'd just like to thank everyone. What we really wanted to do today was jumpstart a discussion about the opportunities, the challenges, and I appreciate the focus on specificity. So thank you for being such a great moderator, and I'm just so appreciative to this panel. I know we'll have another great panel shortly, but these are really important topics.
And in ending, I want to say, first of all, thank you to all of our panelists as well. Thank you, Chairman, for being here the whole time. And I really, to wrap, I really want to emphasize, and I think we all do on these panels, that mobile technology is really, there's so much that's so good about it, and it really helps in many ways how we communicate with each other. And there's no reason for us to be in the dark about this. So I want to encourage two things. I want to encourage everybody to go to the lgtexted.com website that you saw Jane Lynch talk about in the videos. And there's lots of resources that we've worked on for you. And, but I really want to challenge people that we are in a place where we need to get very concrete, as we were saying, so that we can give you the resources and the information, the guidance that works. Instead of saying, just don't press send, right? Just don't do it. That you all deserve that the adults in your community are understanding that technology is a wonderful thing, that it's an innovative, amazing presence in our lives, but that we have to be able to have guidelines and structures so that we do this and we engage in this technology in a civil way. And when we do this, and young people, if you can help us, tell us what works for you and what doesn't, then we can all do a much better job. So thank you all very much for all of your attention and time.
Hi, everyone. How are you? This thing, thanks. Thanks. Perfect. Can everyone hear? Terrific. Welcome back. Thank you very much for those of you who were able to stay for our second panel today. My name is Josh Gottheimer. I'm a senior counselor to Chairman Genachowski, who you heard from earlier at the FCC. And we're here to continue what is going to be a great discussion, I know, with really an all-star panel that we're very, very lucky to have with us today, of entrepreneurs and children's experts and those from the nonprofit industry, nonprofit organizations and industry, and some leaders in academia. So it's really a terrific panel. I know many of you are watching online, so thank you for joining us there as well. Let me give you, if it's okay, a brief introduction of our all-stars here. Tim Sparapani, who's the Director of Public Policy at Facebook. Tim is responsible for developing and implementing the company's interaction with policymakers. Thanks, Tim, for being here. Marcelly Hancock is the president of the Internet Keep Safe Coalition. Marcelly works to help families implement Internet safety and security in their homes, and she brings 20 years of public service to this very important office and organization. Michael Clark is an entrepreneur and is the co-founder of Safety Web. an online service for parents, and that makes it easier to protect the reputation, privacy, and safety of kids online. Dr. Michael Levine at the end over there is the executive director of the Gans Cooney Center. He oversees the Cooney Center's efforts to catalyze and support research in educational media technologies for young children, and is very well known in the field, and we're very lucky to have him here today. On the other side, I'll start with Maureen Cooney, who is from Sprint. She's the privacy officer. Maureen leads Sprint's privacy team, and she has more than a decade of privacy leadership as an attorney and policymaker here in Washington, D.C. Alan Simpson, sitting next to Maureen, is the Vice President of Policy at Common Sense Media, who is a close partner of the FCC's. We work with quite a bit. And Alan's background combines experience as an advocate for children and education issues, as well as work within media organizations. Alan, it's good to see you. Dane Snowden, who's the Vice President and External Affairs of External and State Affairs, Dane, at CTIA, the Wireless Association. Dane is charged with overseeing and managing the association's policies for advocacy and children. Has quite a bit loaded on his shoulders. Dane, thanks for coming today. And Stephen Balcom, who's the Chief Executive Officer of FOSI, the Family Online Safety Institute. And FOSI's mission is to make the online world safer for kids and for their families. And Stephen's been a very good host of the FCC many times. It's good to see you. Thanks for having us. Okay, so I guess we'll get right into it if that's okay with everyone. I'll try to start with a question, but open it up. If somebody else has something you want to add, please jump in. Let's make this as conversational as possible. And I think if anybody in the audience has questions that they want to submit, Jordan or Roger are here somewhere, and you can get them your question, and they'll get it to me. Let's start with Alan, if that's okay. How do I know, Alan, when I have a young child, and I know one of the things that many people come up to us at the FCC and talk about, many parents, is how do I know when to give my child a cell phone? How do I know when they're ready? And do you know what should be part of that decision-making process, and what do you suggest? I know we at the FCC are not in the business of telling parents what to do. We just want to provide information. So part of this, of course, is to help get some thoughts from all of you on what you think is best.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and one we get a lot at Common Sense Media as well, and there are a lot of factors that go into it, because the earlier discussion included a lot of aspects of things that can go wrong with mobile phones and mobile technology. But one of the first reasons every parent thinks about getting a mobile phone for their kids is safety. It is an increasingly necessary tool in our lives today to keep track of our kids and make sure our kids can respond to parents and stay in touch. So our general thinking goes in the range of 8 to 10 to 12, depending on your kid. I think you're seeing most kids having mobile phones. You saw Amanda's numbers that a lot of them at 12 and 13 do get mobile phones. Sometimes they're getting them as hand-me-downs. But there's no perfect age. It's probably more important for parents to be thinking about, have you done the preparation with your children about getting a phone? Have you thought about the rules of conduct that you're going to establish in your family? Okay, you can, because most parents come to us with that question really starting with, my kids are begging for a cell phone. When is the right time? What parents can do with that bit of leverage is establish what the rules should be. Before you get a phone, we're going to establish that you can only use it for these purposes. You need to check in. You need to do these other things. You can download this. You can't download that. And parents need to really understand all the ramifications of having a phone. It's an important safety tool, but as we heard in the earlier discussion, it's also an important tool for a lot of other things that may not be so safe.
Right, so it's really what we're saying is parents should take the lead. I mean, from industry side, Dane, do you have an opinion?
I want to echo what Alan was saying. I think it starts with a conversation, and it's interesting coming from, I represent the wireless industry, and one would think, well, everyone should have a cell phone. When actually we think, as Alan put it, safety is first. And before a parent makes a decision, and we know in the United States you have to be 18 years old to get a cell phone, here for a child to have a cell phone. A parent must decide that for them. But again, the conversation should happen beforehand. You know, I don't have any kids, but I have 3 beautiful goddaughters, 5, 8, and 10. I am a cool godfather for the 10-year-old, not for the 8 and 5-year-old, because I said, no, I don't think they're ready, because some of it's maturity, some of it's responsibility. So it's having that conversation, which is so critical, and having the tools. And I think many of us on this stage are providing those tools for what the parents, how they can begin that conversation about what some things they should be asking. Alan and what they do at Common Sense Media and others are phenomenal. I know what we do at CTIA and what Sprint and other carriers do as well to help parents and guide them through that process of the questions that they should be asking.
And before we'll get into the specific tools in a minute, because I think people probably want to hear a bit, but Dr. Levine?
So this question is an interesting one. It doesn't come down to when you have the first conversation about owning a cell phone. It comes down to how you model your behaviors beginning in early childhood. And what our research at the Cooney Center is finding is that there's almost a viral social phenomenon called the pass-back effect. In other words, parents of young children, preschool children, are using their mobile devices to pass them back to their what's being called iTots. And we're seeing that there are specific instances in which during preparation for a meal, during a car ride at the grocery store, where these devices, if properly used in a safe way, can scaffold an ongoing conversation about an educational application, about some sort of communication with a loved one. So there's a normative behavior that can begin in early childhood that then leads to a more comfortable transition at that, somewhere between ages 10 and 13 when the child begins to control their own mobile device.
So it's okay, we talked about this a little bit, I have an 18-month-old and she's already, we're doing the ABCs on my iPad, she actually can move the letters, and which is incredible. So that's okay, not okay? I don't know, Michael or Marcelly, do you or a doctor?
Balance matters a lot. I wouldn't suggest that you
leave her for hours, right?
I wouldn't suggest that you leave your 18-month-old, as a mommy blogger said to me once, for 4 hours with an iPad or with a smartphone. But sure,
I'm happy to get 4 minutes, actually.
Sure, when we're talking about an instrument to teach a little something to an 18-month-old. But if you're a parent and you don't have a smartphone or don't wish to have your child consume the wheels on the bus or Elmo, teaching letters and numbers, that's fine too. We don't need to rush it, but if it's part of the household economy, so to say, and part of the communication pattern that's being established by mom, dad, sister, and brother, it's fine in limited doses.
But we talk about this with TV. A lot of studies show that you shouldn't. Obviously, there's possible effects putting your child too young in front of a television. So we're not seeing this same phenomenon with. So it's not. You're saying it's not a zero tolerance. There's a moderation.
There are concerns that professionals have. The American Academy of Pediatrics has new guidelines, which does not prescribe use of digital media or television before age 2, but gives very firm guidance on this healthy balance of use. And I think that grandma's good sense, parents' common sense, as well as research are beginning to converge around a new formula for balance.
Do you want to add something here?
Yes, so I think you have to look at, there's 2 different components. When you look at early childhood education, you want to help them manage the screen time. But actually, as they mature, you also have to help them manage the screen time. The 2 skills that I think are critical that youth and anyone who uses a mobile device or any digital device recognize is that we can maintain healthy relationships and we can create positive reputations, but recognizing the role that our mobile or any of the digital devices play in our personal relationships and in our reputation is really, really key to successful use.
And so as part of that, I don't know, Stephen, if you want to add before.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it also depends on what kind of phone. So I was leading a discussion on online safety with some 6th graders at Sidwell Friends only yesterday, and they pointed out that their younger brothers and sisters mostly have Khajiit phones, or the kid-friendly ones. And then there's what they described as just ordinary cell phones, and then there's the smartphones, like the iPhone and Droid phones and so on. And they definitely thought that their younger brothers and sisters shouldn't get an iPhone.
Right.
They should get the Khajiit. But they thought they were old enough for an iPhone, if you see what I mean.
I do, and I mean, getting to the sort of the separation side of going back to the settings, and so if you do have a smartphone or any phone, I know that some of the companies and the carriers are offering settings to allow children to go some places but other places, or to limit time. I mean, one of the things we hear all the time is, what I'm most nervous about as a parent is I don't know why my voice is echoing like that, but. Yes, I better make a good point. That as a parent, you can't. If you give your child a phone, you can't control where they're going, how much time they're on. Right? They're gone. It's not as if you can see them. They have this device in their pocket, and they're off at school during the day, or they're in a different room, having a relationship with a device that you're not necessarily part of minute to minute. And they could do things like go on Facebook, and I know Tim would say there's an age that we believe that's 13, I think, where you cut off and say it shouldn't be before 13. So what do we do about this? What's practical? I know the private sector has come up with some solutions on this, and Michael, I don't know if you want to jump in, or Tim, you want to jump in here?
Well, I think the first thing to point out as a follow-on to Stephen's point is today there's very few generic phones. Even at the lowest levels, carriers are providing smartphones for free and incentivizing those phones. The carriers have done a very good job of providing parental control tools that are effective at these younger ages that we're talking about at the entrance levels. What kinds of applications, what kinds of tools, what are the things that I as a parent can determine are appropriate? Where that gap starts to disappear is as kids get into that 9 to 10, all the way through the teenage years. And it's not as much about controlling what they're doing as much about learning what they're doing and making sure that they're doing so in a way that's moderate, treating the teens, thanks to all of you that came here today, treating them with respect. I think that was a message I got out of the first panel, that the most effective ways to work with kids are to respect them and be respectful in having these conversations. And so the most effective tools, and this is one of the models we built off of, is building and empowering parents to trust their kids with behavior, not cut the cord, but instead encourage responsible use, and do so across all connected devices. Because what we're talking about here is generically mobile phones, but that's how TVs are connected in the future. That's how every type of device, whether it's Wi-Fi, whether it's 700 megahertz, whether it's 4G, LTE, anything. These are all the devices we have to be concerned about, and we have to make sure that kids use it in moderation, that they're doing so responsibly and building the right relationships in doing so.
And Tim, you want to comment on this?
The United States is actually quite backwards from the rest of the world. Here in the United States, most people encounter the internet directly through a computer. Most of you, that's your first experience, either in the library or in a classroom or at home. But the rest of the world is using at least one of these, and this is their primary means of interacting with the internet. They don't really have access to computers in lots of places in the rest of the world, but they do have access to mobile phones. So one of the things that Facebook did this summer, which we're very excited about, is we became the first company on the web to allow you to set privacy settings no matter where you are using your smartphone, and have those privacy settings apply everywhere, including back on the website at facebook.com or on an app if you're looking at Facebook that way. And I think that that's the direction that we're all heading, is that more and more of the features which have become standardized to keep us safe, secure, happy on our various websites or services have to move to the mobile device. And I think that's where we're headed. We have a couple of other innovations like that. I'd be happy to talk about them.
Mobile privacy settings. But Stephen, do you think, are you comfortable with where we are right now? And I'll ask Alan this too. Do you think there's enough in the marketplace? And I know we put a lot out there, or have a lot of tools that are being developed. Maureen and I talked about some that Sprint has. But do parents know where to find this information, what to do, how is it easily accessible? Do you feel, should we be satisfied with where we are right now?
Well, I think it's changing so fast that, first of all, parents have an incredible job of just keeping up with the new technologies on the one hand, but also the apps and all the wacky places that kids go to out on the internet. You know, we emphasize tools, rules, and schools. So the technology tools, obviously, and all of the carriers have parental controls. One of the ones that we use at Verizon Wireless, for instance, allows you to see every single, not the content, but when a text has been sent and when it's been received. So I was able to discover that my daughter was one of the 200 texts a day kids that Amanda asked for earlier, simply by looking at our phone bill online. Which
Are you paying for that? I know Verizon has a service that they're charging for, right?
We were, and she was hit with a phone bill of $92, and now we're on unlimited texting, and she's contributing $5 a month for that particular privilege.
But are you paying even for the tracking?
For the tracking service, yeah, that's that's a $5 a month, which we think is money really well spent. But back to your point, I think that parents often are at a disadvantage, and we need a great deal more of parental education. And one of the things, for instance, we offer is a family safety contract, which we ask the kids and the parents to sit down and to make commitments about how they're going to act online. Right. And also, by the way, that parents won't overreact when kids, for instance, get into trouble.
Right, and that's great. So there's an understanding, just like you have any other conversation at home about anything. Making sure that you have this conversation. Dane and Maureen, why, I bring up this fee because it's brought up to us a lot of why, if the companies really think this is important and want to help parents, why aren't they doing everything to make it as easy as possible and charging $5 a month or whatever it is, depending upon the carrier, to actually have a suite of protections that you could offer your family? Do you think that's the way to go? Is that where the market's heading? It's just the way the private sector works in terms of innovations? What's the reasoning behind that, you think?
Well, I think it's a combination. What we're seeing is that some services are free and some are you're paying for a service. I think like Stephen mentioned, he wanted an extra service, so he's paying for that. But some of these filtering tools are no cost for consumers. And I think what we're doing as an industry is offering varying levels of what parents may want depending on that particular child. Because as we look at what a 12-year-old child may want or need versus a 17 or 18-year-old child, it's very, very different. So it's important that we have a suite of tools. Right. And again, some of them are free and some of them are for cost. I want to go to one of your earlier points as well. According to Pew, 52% of parents set limits already, so they are aware of this as an option. So parents are finding it for sure. And for example, one of the reasons we launched our website, besmartwireless.com, was to ensure that the other 48% of parents can make sure they know about it, so that these tools and filters are there for consumers. So in terms of the fee question, much like what we do now with if you buy a computer, you pay for software to make sure you get privacy settings or like McAfee or whatever it might be. It's the same principle as the industry standard that we tend to follow. But again, we have a varying degree of some things are free, some things are for cost, and it goes from there.
And Alan and Marsley or Michael, are you feel like we're in a good place just to keep this conversation on this line? Are we there yet?
I think one of the areas that industry could make it easier for parents is to help us navigate when something goes wrong. So it's been exciting to watch the trends in industry to allow more resources for parents to manage, to dial off features. So you can pick the time of texting, or you're going to certain number of hours. All of those things are very helpful. But I think as you look cross-section at parents, when something goes wrong, how do they get back in touch with you? What type of customer support do you have? And then also from the education community, helping schools with staff development so that they can manage when something happens on a mobile device in a school, how can they react in a way that's responsible and helpful rather than out of fear? So what can they do to empower the teachers and the students to be able to better manage? And one thing that we haven't brought up yet that I would like to throw out to the panelists is that youth connect with their digital devices in a way that we never will. For me, digital devices are an efficiency tool. They help me connect quicker and faster, but never in a richer, more emotional way. And so recognizing that the emotional level for youth, when something goes wrong, they can feel pretty traumatized. So what can we do as the adults around the students, around our own children, and then around as upstanders, meaning rather than bystanders in the digital environment, we become aware of things that we might not have because maybe we didn't see it in the classroom, but it's going to be captured on a mobile device and up on Facebook, really quickly. So how can we create a network of support to better support those students when something really isn't terrific happening?
And Ryan, is that Dr. Levine, do you want to comment on that, and then Michael will bring you back in on that piece? Yeah. Go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
Too many Michaels here. The one thing I do want to do is I do want to challenge the wireless industry to make sure that the data that's available for parents to understand their children's behavior continues to be available. Because as I look at the trends in the prepaid industry, as I look at the trends across even the major carriers, what I've seen is less and less of that information is available. In some cases, I can't see where texts were made and what those conversations were. And even more and more difficult to look at where those conversations are occurring. In Safety Web, we've got a comprehensive solution that covers both the web and mobile, and that's the slice that parents are finding most useful today. Who are my kids talking to the most? How does that behavior change? Not digging into the private information, but focusing on who those contacts and relationships are with. And then the most important challenge is pulling that same data out of application usage. Today, if I'm on an iPhone, if I'm on an Android device, if I'm on a BlackBerry device, I as a parent don't know what applications my child has downloaded, what was free, what type of data leakage there is, and that data leakage can actually play a very important role because that's private information, private conversations that is, you've got a blind faith in what that developer is doing with that data behind the scenes. So that's an important challenge to all of us.
Let me speak to one more issue that I'm picking up from parents as well as policymakers. Safety's first, absolutely positively, especially when you're speaking about very young children. But educational value is also a close tie. And one of the issues that we're picking up in our research is that marketers, perhaps somewhat overzealously, marketing applications and other things that you use with your mobile devices as educational without any independent it's assertion. It's not based on research. So research that we did for the report D is for Digital a couple of years back took a look at 288 digital products that were labeled educational in some sort of marketing scheme, and 2 of them had research or intentional educational value. I'm not arguing that everything needs to be educational. Fun and entertaining is fine for part of the day, but in terms of thinking about how safety leads to learning and development, we need to put these things together in a more substantial balance. App makers, Apple is moving in this direction. The Droid store is moving in this direction. Ovi is moving in this direction. We need some industry-wide standards to help rate what the educational value is of the different products.
Maureen, sure.
Yeah, Josh, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of the points here that were made, and I think some of them were really exceptional. One was yours, which is about parents really needing simplicity in order to actually do parental monitoring. As Dane mentioned, many of the services that the carriers provide now are free, and some add-ons are at a cost. Sprint launched in November one site that parents can go to. Folks who are already customers with Sprint know to go to sprint.com, but from that site, if you put in family, you're in a family zone. And it not only will walk you through how to set up controls on texting, on websites visited, on appropriate phone numbers that your child may be permitted to call, on whether to use a camera, other things like that. It walks the parent through actually how to do that, which is sometimes why the other 42% of parents are not already instituting the controls, because it can be difficult if it's not walked through. The other point that Michael just made about linking up safety with the simplicity on controls is also important. So, for instance, from our site and from other carrier sites, you get right to safety information. Sprint happens to have a partnership with a group of coalitions, Big Brother and Sisters of America, NCMEC, and the National Education Association for net safety. And you get to that right from our site, as you do from other carriers on their particular safety sites. So it's very important that it be in one place, a one-stop shop.
Right, so what we're hearing is we have to more clarity, more for parents and ease of access to this information so that parents can know if they want it, where to get it. And so that sounds like it's very important. You know, one theme, yes, Alan, sure.
One quick thing on that. I mean, I think the industry has done a really good job trying to make that information more available, more accessible, more simple. One point we've raised a lot is that, you know, most parents' first interaction with the phone is actually when they go purchase it. So advances can be made there as well. The vendors who do not work for Sprint but work for, you know, the local store could also be helpful as part of getting that message out. But I also want to pick up on one of the things that Michael said. The biggest growing area of use of mobile devices is apps. And there's very little information out there right now for parents, not just about is this app educational or is it valuable, but what age group is it appropriate for? And that's something
is
that
there
we
any
really
movement afoot to try to help categorize that and
Yes, we're actually working on that right now. It's funny, before we began, Stephen asked me, where are we staying on rating apps? And that's a process that, as you know, Josh, and I know many of the audience may not know, that we in the wireless industry, we don't control the apps. That you can make an app in your garage in America and get it up on someone's network and start selling it and become a millionaire, which is something wonderful about the app world and about the openness of the systems and carrier systems that we have. But we're in the process of trying to harmonize and get a system in place that would augment what we've already done in our industry when it comes to rating systems. We want to make sure that parents don't have to keep learning something new over and over again, but they can learn something, they can understand the concept of what apps are and how they're rated. So we hope to have some announcements on that sometime in 2011.
That, another theme is also giving information to parents and how that information, so as we're saying, it's ease of access, but also what that information is, where they're getting it, also the point of sale, as Alan pointed out, another important place, different points of interaction with parents where they can actually get this information, especially if, but like anything, there's so much coming at all of us these days. How do you get it in such an easy way and understand and disaggregate it so you understand what to believe and what not to believe and what's safe and what's not safe, even as a parent to believe, right? Because you don't know when you're being marketed to or when it's actually pure, the information. So we've gotten some questions from the audience, if it's okay if I can jump in here. And one of the, Tim, you'll like this, one of the themes here is, of course, how do you, when you put something on the internet, how do you retrace it, how do you get rid of it? And also this one specifically of, can you tell us more about parental controls for Facebook and more about the automatic app on Facebook that allows friends to see where you are or where your child is when posting? I guess this is the tracing information. It's also on mobile devices, location based, which is a big theme that's coming up.
So there's a lot to respond to there.
I know it's okay. On your mind a lot. So
it is. When you delete something, there were some misstatements in the earlier panel. I think people are rightfully saying if you put something up on the internet, if you send a text, it could be out there for forever. That's true. But when you delete something on Facebook, it actually is deleted, and it's not recoverable. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be careful. So students out there, and there are a bunch of you in the audience, I have to tell you, Facebook is a privilege and it's not a right. And when you do something inappropriate and it's reported to us, we reserve the right to take away your account. And I know that's a big punishment. I have a 16-year-old brother-in-law, and when his parents, my in-laws, have taken away his Facebook rights for a week, he feels as if the world has ended. Right? He's cut off from his friends. He feels like he's not really a person anymore. When you delete something on Facebook, it really is deleted, however. It's different than deactivating your account. And so we're happy to actually help you wipe out things that you shouldn't have put up there in the first place. But that means you have to be cautious in the first place, because when you share with somebody else, if you share a photo, if you share a comment, even if you delete it on your account, it's still on their account, right? Because they have access and they can view that information. And that's where you have to think twice, sometimes 3 times before you actually say something to somebody. If you react in anger or even with a joke, because you don't know how somebody else later on would see that and interpret that. So I urge a lot of caution. With respect to the app about tracing and parental controls, we actually don't offer an app for that. All of our apps on our site are based by third-party developers. These are separate companies who build tracking software. We do encourage, however, every minor to friend your parents. And if you're a parent out there and you're listening, we urge you, as a condition of allowing your child to have a Facebook account, to make them friend you. Now, I know that there's limited profile and that your parents probably don't know what that is, but the kids certainly know what that is, where you can hide some of the information. But I think that's really central, that a parent be part of the relationship that you have when you start a Facebook account.
So on the location-based information, just on that point, so whether or not you can see what someone's doing or the pictures you have, but what about the knowing where they are? And obviously this is a developing field, a very quickly developing field. And I know this is brought up to us all the time of parents are concerned with it's wonderful in terms of safety, and we use it a lot with E911 and with your phones if you call 911. Which is a wonderful aspect of it, and there's lots of positive uses. If you want a restaurant nearby, obviously it's a great resource. But on the flip side of it is people are concerned about stalking issues or tracing issues. Does anybody want to speak to that?
Sure, I'll take it. The wireless industry has a simple principle: notice and consent. So what that means for some of the kids over here is that when you are if you have a smartphone and you'll see something that pops up that says, we want to identify your location, and you have to say yes or no. So you have the authority to be able to say, I want someone to know where I am, or I don't want someone to know where I am. Now, the phone company is usually going to know where you are, and we do that for reasons because for 911. So when you call 911, we can figure out where you are in case of an emergency. But our general principle is that we want to make sure there's effective and clear notice and consent for all users of these devices, no matter if you are 40-some-odd years old like I am, or if you're 14 or 15 years old like the young people here in the audience.
Maureen?
Yeah, I think I'd just add to that. If I were a student and you saw a pop-up on your phone that asked permission to track your location, what's most important is to think about the use of that application. What are they collecting? Why are they collecting your location information? And not every app is a friendly or trustworthy app. So you also have to evaluate yourselves. Gee, is this an app that I want to track me? Is there another one that does the same thing that I might have a greater sense of confidence in? And that's very important. On the other hand, for parents in tracking, the services that are provided, Sprint has a family locator, other services have others, those can be tremendously helpful and soothing to a parent, where you have 2 working parents and the child is being picked up by many professionals who are helping with daycare, to make sure that the phone is in the backpack and it locates where they're moving to after those school hours can be very helpful.
Terrific.
I think I would like to say I think the principle that Dane's expressed is the right one. I don't think we're seeing it applied sufficiently. I think there are a lot of apps out there that do have GPS or geolocation aspects that are not fully revealed when people use them, and I think there's going to be some potential dangers there for kids. I do recognize that geolocation has its real benefits for parents, for kids, for anyone using apps, but there are also some real potential problems there, and I don't think people are getting enough information. I think especially kids are not getting enough information about how some of these apps work, and I think that's a shared responsibility. I mean, Jane Lynch mentioned this at the beginning, that kids need to be responsible with their phones. I think we all need to be responsible with this technology. And I think pointing to the fact that a third-party company is the one who actually creates that app doesn't relieve the carriers or anybody else of their responsibility for trying to make that information more clear and accessible, as we were saying at the beginning.
And to that point, I mean, on being responsible, and Tim, I know you mentioned on Facebook you can wipe it clean, and Maureen and I talked about this yesterday. When a lot of texts are out there it's hard to wipe them out completely. But even what people are texting, and obviously another major topic out there is cyberbullying or sexting, and the issues around that. You talk to parents, and this is consistently front of mind. It's been in several New York Times pieces lately of raising this issue. How do we help parents, or what do parents do about this? And is there something more information we can give? Is it again the sitting down with your contract, and should a parent be able to monitor it? What are the solutions here?
For parents to recognize is that all digital communication, it's not private. So I want my children to recognize I'm not poking in on every conversation, but the fact that I actually could helps them to recognize that, everything they post actually can be or is private and or is public. And sometimes we get confused with privacy settings versus encrypted. So when I set my privacy settings on Facebook, they're not encrypting what I put there. So anybody who views what I have written or posted then in various ways could be shared through some types of technology. So helping youth to recognize the true nature of technology. I'm a firm believer in just let kids know the truth. And you don't have to try to pad it and soften it. Just let them understand that it's packets going back and forth. And, once you put those 1 and 0 images out there, there is no way to fully, completely, 100% retract them. And I think when you watch their faces, they begin to better understand the nature of technology. They're going to make better choices.
This is the positive reputation you talk about. How do you
Absolutely.
Build that positive reputation?
The positive reputation plus the healthy relationships. So sometimes you'll see texting that gets just almost compulsive, where it's tit, where they're trying to problem solve or they're trying to push their own agenda. So it could be harassment or it could be intimidation. Helping kids to recognize that and then to know how to respond to that is an important skill.
1 second before Dana. Either Michael, you want to add to that?
There's a couple of important things that we need to make sure parents are doing, and the first one is being proactive. So Tim's point about making sure that before your child hops on Facebook that you're their first friend. It's, there's also making sure that we're not building applications and building platforms that allow for anonymous usage. We've seen things in the industry like FormSpring where became very abusive environments where there's no accountability for who is posting content about others. You've got to build those legitimate relationships online in the same way that you build them offline. And then, finally, I think as we were just talking about location, I think there's something that for all of us, whether we're working on applications on phones, whether we're building the infrastructure to accommodate those applications, it's the more that we make little actions implicit, the more that things are going to happen. So for instance, location, we've seen so much growth in location data being shared. 3 years ago, if I wanted to share my location with a photo, with an update, that was 3 separate emails, that was 3 separate interactions. Today in almost every application, it's 1 click, and I'm not thinking about it. I'm not giving additional consent at that point in time. And it's because I accepted that application and there are 35 different privacy options that they asked me for up front. And so it's, as an industry, we have to be the shepherds of making sure that we're encouraging the responsible development of these apps, the responsible usage of that data from these applications, but then also empowering parents with the ability to stay ahead of that data and not be the last ones to know.
Is the private sector coming up with applications to help parents here? I mean, we went out recently in California at a show and realized there was just it seemed to be a tremendous growth in innovators developing, the garage innovators developing new apps to actually help parents and make sure to help them avoid problems.
It's where we stepped up and really thought we were, where we believe that we're taking this direction that's really changing the security industry. Everything that we've done traditionally as an industry is focused on protecting devices, protecting chips, protecting bits and bytes of data that are crossing the wires. And the future security model has to shift and be more about starting with the person as what we're protecting and then working outwards. What are the elements of being a person that need to be protected? It's my reputation, it's my privacy, it's my identity, and all of that combined is wrapped into safety. And that's where we have to think, and it's a new paradigm for everybody to look at.
There's one more issue that we haven't discussed in terms of the protection and education of children with the use of digital technologies, and that is aligning the expectations for kids of how the caring adults in their lives interact around technology. It's my view, and this is changing but very slowly, that there's something of a moat that exists between the home environment, the community environment, and the school environment. Lots of good reasons for that, sexting and cyberbullying and cheating and all the sorts of things that people write journalistic accounts about. But if we can figure out a way beginning in early childhood to align those expectations between the parents, between the educators, between the grandparents, so that there's a behavior set that children are comfortable with, we're going to make some more progress here.
Dane, I didn't want to cut you off before. I know you wanted to comment on the cyberbullying or the sexting.
Well, this is a perfect segue into, I think, what we're all finding here where we are today in 2010, and that is it's a shared responsibility that each of us have. The industry has a role, parents have a role, and schools have a role. And it's fascinating. If you look back in time, there was a point in time where we couldn't use calculators in the classroom. There are schools, as we saw in Amanda's report, that bar cell phones in schools. What we are suggesting as a thought is we have to bring technology into the classroom and teach digital literacy. And it's teaching digital literacy is not just teachers teaching students, it's also students teaching parents and other organizations teaching everyone else to help us all understand how do we do this together. And again, it's not one individual group or one individual student or teacher, it's everyone working together to figure out how do we do it and advance the goal as we go forward.
And Steve, we'll give you the last word on that point before we close, because I heard the bell, and we're in school here. So
I think we're in a historical transition phase right now. All of us on the stage were brought up we've had analog childhoods, right? And then the digital world has happened to us as adults. Our kids are just basically living in a digital world. So I think that we have a major job on our hands during this transitional phase to get particularly to parents, but get to them in interesting ways. I thought it was significant that we had a Hollywood star to open up this show for us. Glee recently did a program on bullying, and actually that was part of the thing. Ordinary Families? Modern Families had a skit where basically the family had to give up the internet for 2 or 3 days, right. and we just watched the family almost fall apart. But it was a very interesting kind of teaching moment for us sitting on the couch going, yeah, I wonder if we could do that. And the answer came back, don't even try.
I think, yes.
But all I'm saying is that as much as we say that it's got to be done in the schools, it's got to be, government has a role, industry has a role, Hollywood and the storytellers have a role here too.
Yeah, so I think that's a great way to end. I think this is a tremendous panel with lots of different ideas. This is not going to be solved overnight, but I think it's very important. That's what we're doing at the FCC, to have these conversations and so to help parents do what they think is right and to have the tools they need. And that's why we're here today. I think it was, and I want to thank McKinley for hosting us. This was really a terrific day, and thank you all for taking time out of your busy days. Take care.